Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with American Scouser. It's Monday. I have the grumpy ready to go. Honestly, the season we're having, I might invest in like a 7-pack of this or something like that, so I can pretty much use it every morning. Mateusz, the Polish prince, is with us with his coffee.
As punishment for the weekend, I kind of just let some sit out here over the weekend, and now I have to drink it because this is what the club makes me do. So
Yes, a rough weekend indeed. I mean, it was rough not only because of the score, the way it happens, and I don't know why. Maybe because we had some hopes. You
it's the
knew
hope.
we were, but then when they don't have Holland, when they don't have Foden, you're like, okay, the leveling field, the playing field is getting a bit more level, and you take the lead. And here's what's sad:
They're
even when
better
we
without
were up
Holland.
1-0, I never thought we were winning that game.
No, because it never felt like we were in control at any point, even after the goal. It kind of when Mo scored, I mean, it was still pretty early, but I was looking at my laptop going, is this coming back? Like, what just happened? Like, what actually just happened? Does this count? This feels very weird. This feels very odd. And then 10 minutes later, everything goes to hell. So I think honestly, City plays better without Holland. Their system is set up in a way that brings out the best of all their players when Holland isn't the focal point. So I think they kind of it's crazy to say that about someone who's put in 35 goals this season, but I think as a team they play much better without him. But of course, you're not gonna not play Holland. It's just the fact that they bring out the best of each other when Holland's not there. And I think with Alvarez, they have something different that they don't have in Holland.
Yeah, it gets spread out a bit more, it feels like
Yeah.
that focus, and that's harder to defend in some ways too. Not that we did a lot of defending, but if you were trying to defend, it's a lot harder to defend when danger is coming from everywhere as opposed to a guy to focus on, so that you, as long as you know where he's at, you're halfway there, kind of a deal. As a center back, that's like part, like a big part of the battle. But yeah, it was like an extremely way to start the weekend. Fenerbahce piled on top. There is not enough people to kill on Call of Duty to get these frustrations out. But it could be worse. You could have lost your job. So we'll go in chronological order.
Nice.
And you like that, huh?
Great transition.
It's all about transitions, baby. It's all about transitions. Okay, here we go. First off, we have Brendan Rodgers out at Leicester. The funny thing is, we talked about this forever. And as a joke with Mecca when we started this morning show way back in the day. And I guess my biggest concern, or like the thing that I don't understand, not a concern, I guess, but the timing of the terminations make no sense to me. Like, were these guys hanging on with so thin of a thread, then just cut the freaking thing off? Why not do it during the international break and wait for this?
Yeah, that was, and we talked about this last week too, right? About timing. And last week we talked about there was a record set for the most managers being fired in one season. Now we have to add on to that record because now instead of 11, there's 13.
Yes.
So that's crazy. And part of it is, especially when you look at someone like Rodgers, it at no point during the season, if he would have been sacked, would we have sat here and gone, yeah, no, he didn't deserve that. Because there were ample amounts of time to go through, whether it was through the rough stretch at the beginning, whether it was over the World Cup break, whether it was the first couple weeks in January, and whether it was lastly during the international break. Those are all times where it could have happened. We'd sit here and go, yeah, I mean, look, he's done good things at the club. He won a trophy, right? He won the FA Cup. I feel like Rodgers is this kind of weird manager. He either really overachieves or really underachieves. And it depends on the year what you're going to get. So I think while he's a decent manager, and I just think he got all that he could out of Leicester, and that was it. I think he should not have come back for this year. I think they should have gone a different direction. But this close to the end of the season, it doesn't make sense because I don't think, and we'll talk about it too with Chelsea. I don't think they're going to appoint anyone up until the end of the year. I don't know. Maybe you want someone for the last 10 games. I really don't know.
I think in Leicester's case, you do, right? I mean, will Chelsea, like, you're like in the middle swimming, So you can get to this shore or you can get to that shore. It doesn't matter, let's just keep like going around
Just
in
keep
the
swimming.
middle
Just
till we
keep
get
swimming.
somebody. But in Leicester's case, you're at one side trying to swim across to the other side. You are in the relegation zone now, right? I mean, they are in the. They are, yes, they are. They're 90. You're under Everton, for God's sakes. So you are at the low of the low. So you do need somebody. Big Sam comes to mind.
I was about to say Big Sam or Graham Potter.
Or Graham Potter. See, that's like an interesting one. I don't know if Graham Potter, after the abuse he got, and like this merry-go-round of nightmares that he was in over this last, I don't know, 3-4 months. I don't know if he would be up for another job. If I'm Potter, I'm probably just
taking a break for
the
a
rest
bit.
of the year off.
Yeah, I mean he's already gotten paid, right? Chelsea
Yep.
had to pay a fee, had to pay him to release him. So not only do they spend all the money over the summer, all the money over January, but now they have to spend extra money to get rid of the manager. So he's fine if he wants to take a little break, I'm sure. But a club like Leicester, not maybe not this year obviously, but a club like Leicester could be a good spot for him.
Yes, because I think you have some talent and you can acquire some more cheaper talent that you scout out well. And this is like now, so we'll get to like Potter and then we'll talk a bit about Potter. Like, what did this show about Potter at the same time? Like, did it show that he can't handle egos and the names and the money? Or was that, look at it while Brighton has continued to play? Is that just a matter of like Brighton doing well scouting, getting these guys at a good price and like top-notch players and stuff like that? So I don't know what we saw there because we don't know how much Potter had in terms of like power and say. One of the headlines this morning was one of the things, and I mentioned this freaking like the day it happened, and for the next couple of days, we might have talked about it in the morning show when ZH started. The first game after coming back from not going there, I can't remember what the hell it was, the paperwork, some bullshit like that it was, or the email was going to spam or some shit like that with PSG. And I was like, how is the guy that you were about to sell starting? Which signaled then to me that maybe Potter was not the guy who wanted him to go in the first place.
Yeah. And it's really tough when you sign on to this big new experiment, I guess you could call it, with Todd Boehly coming in and kind of just picking whoever he wants to pick and pay for whoever he wants to pay for. There's not always, you don't always want to have the names that the owner wants to bring in. And we kind of talked about it. It was a while ago. I think Boehly might have mentioned the likes of Ronaldo, right? And the staff would have been like, no, this is not the direction. I understand that he's a big name and, you might get a little bit of some extra kit sales, whatever, but that's not the way to go. And so maybe I think there was a disconnect in how much power Potter had over who was really coming in. And if there were just players coming in and he had to do what he could with the ones coming in, not even wanting them to come in.
And that's the thing, like, so all these signings that were big money signings, we know a lot happens in the background with the agents and stuff. I mean, we don't know if the agent is like, hey, he's available. And then they're like, hey, Graham, guess what? I bought this guy. And he's like, oh, shit, like, we didn't really need him and I don't really want him. I don't know what happened there, that it seemed like you get these guys, like the big money guys, and they signed quite a few of them. You would think there's like a role for him to go into, but he was still tinkering, not sure of who should go where.
Yeah, it's tough, especially when you get a full new squad number of players and all of them cost a certain amount. You expect them to play. And then it's hard if you have players that you like that weren't purchased recently for big money to justify not playing them. I mean, there were moments, when you had the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek playing the best at Chelsea earlier in the season, and then you bring in all these guys and you expect to replace him right away. Meanwhile, he could have been the one that was doing the job well. And so that can be tough. And I hope no one goes back. No one cares enough to go back to the moment when Potter was assigned to Chelsea. And I was sitting here going, yeah, I'm worried about this. This team is going to be really fucking good, you guys. This is gonna be fantastic for Chelsea. I'm so upset that Potter is leaving Brighton to go to Chelsea because he's gonna build them up, and I'm kind of glad I'm really wrong. But I just hope no one really goes back and looks that up.
Yeah, that's a good call. Let me mark the calendars on that date. But yeah, I mean, I thought the same. I mean, I think it was more about let's see if he can do it with the big money and with the big names, because it's a different job. It is definitely a different job between being a manager at a smaller club where expectations are lower. Yeah, the pressure is probably still there, but expectations are lower, so that affects the pressure level. And then you go, one step higher. There's a lot of money coming in, and that especially in Chelsea's case, where there's so much money being dumped in, that you have to be able to produce at the end. I guess the question, like I say, comes back to the timing. Like, why now? Why did they wait? I mean, you look at Leicester's scores. That doesn't make sense either. So Leicester, we're going all the way back here. I mean, holy shit, dude, we're scrolling quite a lot here. Oh my God. They even lost to us, for fuck's sakes. So the last time Leicester had a decent score was the 4-1 victory against Tottenham, February 11th. And this is one, actually, I remember when they beat Leicester away 4-2. They were kind of like in a mini roll. They climbed up, I think, and then they beat Tottenham 4-1, and looked like Tottenham looked really bad that game. I remember that. Then the schedule got really, really crappy on them, right? We said, oh, it's going to be United, Arsenal. There's a Southampton game in there, but then they have Chelsea, away to Brentford, away to Crystal Palace. And really, all they mustered from all those games in terms of points was 1 point against Brentford. And I know the Crystal Palace game has a significance in terms of maybe the location, like, you're giving away points to another competitor in that thing. But you had the same thing with Southampton. Why not pull the trigger after they lose to Southampton?
Because it was meant to be a long-term project. I don't know. That's what they said, right? They brought Potter in because they.
Oh no! I'm sorry. This was like Leicester's
I'm sorry.
schedule. I'm gonna go to Chelsea next.
Whoops.
Which I think that's even bigger head scratcher, I guess. Apart from that, they did have some wins sprinkled in, but let's start with Leicester first. I'm trying to make sense of why the timing. Why not fire him after the Southampton loss, you think, and wait for now?
I don't know. It doesn't make sense. We the whole year, and especially back when Maka and you guys were doing the morning shows every day. Rodgers came up every day for just for fun, but also because we kept wondering, why does he still have this job? and the takeaway from that for me is just, I don't know if it's because the owner felt like this is the time to do it, and then in the summer kind of just look into rebuilding the squad in some way. But like you said, if you're facing a relegation battle and there's still 10 matches left, going into a relegation battle without a manager can be really tough. I mean, obviously the players themselves, they don't want to be relegated, so they have something to play for regardless. So they're going to try and play however they can play. But it is really difficult to try and envision a world where they don't bring someone in to help kind of weather the storm for the next 10 games, because it's going to be very difficult. And if they do drop to the championship, I don't know if we're going to see them come back up, because they're going to have a lot of their players poached. And I don't know if they're going to be able to. Obviously, they can rebuild in the future, and they were in this position 9 years ago, whatever it was, 8 years ago. So they can come back, but it's going to be really tough because the likes of James Maddison, Harvey Barnes, Timothy Castagna, I mean, even Patson Daka. I know he hasn't been playing well, but those are the kinds of guys that aren't going to be playing in the championship. Yeah. So it's going to be really tough to see what they do. Like I said before, if this was any other point during the season, it would have made sense. Now that it happened, it's annoyingly doesn't make sense, because he could have been sacked at any point before this and they would have been better off. But now it's just in a really weird timeline.
I almost feel like, they were, if I remember right, and I was trying to pull it up, but I wasn't able to, they were in the relegation zone at one point earlier on in the season.
Early in the season for the first 6-7 weeks, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I don't know if the owner at the time said, hey, you're lucky it's not April, because if I see us in the relegation zone in April. You can, and like
he held on to his word. He looked at the calendar and he goes, "Oh shit, it's April." Brendan, I gotta talk to you.
It's getting warm out. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it feels a very panic button kind of a move there. Just like they were like, holy shit, this whole loyalty thing is great, but it might be too late to change, which is the only reason I'm thinking, and I guess we'll find this out like today, tomorrow, that these guys had a semi-decent, solid backup plan in mind. When you don't take advantage of this 2-week period that you could have brought a new manager in, and especially a team like Leicester, yeah, they have some international players, but not as many as, I don't know, like a City or Arsenal or Liverpool and stuff like that, where everybody is gone and you got 10 young kids to practice with. So it would have been a good time to bring him in and sort everything out. Now they're bringing him in with 10 games to go, and this is when, okay, let's see Leicester's schedule coming up over here, but it's kind of like the new guy is going to get the benefit of the old guy getting rid of the easy game. So now they have Villa at home, Bournemouth at home. They go to City, then Wolves. I think rest of the way they pretty much play. They play us, so there's a lot of winnable games there. There's Villa at home, Bournemouth at home, Wolves at home, Everton at home, Liverpool at home, West Ham at home. And that's the thing. Like from this point on, that's why it almost feels semi unfair because, dude, the hard games are out of the way. So isn't Brandon going to be like, what the fuck? I could have beaten Bournemouth too.
Yeah, because if you look at it, you could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 winnable games.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Bournemouth, Wolves, Everton, Leeds, West Ham.
And pretty much everything at home, I hate to say it, sadly, us included,
sure,
are winnable games for them. Most of them are against teams fighting for relegation, so taking 3 points away is almost like a 6-point hit there.
Yeah,
I don't know. It just feels odd in terms of timing and the panic button. Yeah, I don't know.
I agree because if you give him a chance, at this point in the season, I think it should have at least given him through Bournemouth. If you're gonna fire someone this late in the season, what's the difference between April 1st and April 8th? Give him Villa, give him Bournemouth, and then if both of those are dropped, then okay, look, you're going into Man City, then you can do something different because you're playing against teams that you need to beat in the relegation zone. It's unfair to not. I don't want to say it's unfair because he kind of lived through borrowed time, I think, earlier in the year too. So I guess I don't want to say it's unfair, but if you're at this, I'm just comparing it to this point in the season, it is unfair to not give him that extra chance against Bournemouth because I think that would be the game to kind of go off of.
Yeah, that's fair. Especially if you're not taking advantage of the international break to do it. I don't know what they would have thought that, hey, Crystal Palace, let's see. And I didn't watch the game. Like I say, after the Liverpool game, it was just like, okay, I guess I'm staying out of soccer and social media rest of the day kind of a deal. But they lost to a 94th minute goal and they scored an own goal. So they had actually the lead in that game. But when you look at the stats, it's 31-3 when it comes to shots in Crystal Palace's favor. So it looks like they got peppered pretty good and they're hanging out for dear life. And obviously they couldn't. I don't know if they just saw no life in the team or this is not going anywhere. It just feels really odd. So let's go to the other one where I throw you a curveball and gave you the schedule for the other guys. Let's look at Chelsea over here. So Chelsea is recent schedule. If you think about it, when could they have pulled the plug? I don't know. You look at it, they're still in the Champions League.
Yep.
So I guess they're gonna go against Real. I don't know if you didn't have any faith. They continue in the Champions League. They got past Dortmund, but they lost at home to Southampton. Then they lost to Tottenham. They beat Leeds. So it's up and down, up and down. They tie at home to Everton, which I thought was a poor result, seeing how Everton plays. So it's just kind of why now, again, is the question. Once again, I don't know if you watched the game against Villa. I did not. So we're just looking at it for the stats. If you look at the stats, it's all Chelsea. Looks like 27 shots to 5, 8 on target to 2.
Yeah.
Possession, passes, everything looks like they dominated.
I did watch some extended highlights, and not the whole game, but Chelsea was just taking shot after shot after shot, and there were a couple opportunities that they should have absolutely scored. Mudryk missed the sitter. Chilwell had a goal called off for a possible foul. I mean, probably foul, but I mean, I think if it's not called a foul, I could also see that not being overturned either. It's one of those like this was the call that was made. There wasn't enough evidence to overturn it kind of situation, so they kept it as is. And then Villa's 2 goals came off of a Cucurella mistake where he headed the ball back to Ollie Watkins, and Watkins chipped Kepa. And then the second goal was just a McGinn beauty, just absolute stunner. So, I mean, Villa took their 2 chances, and they finished them really well. I think part of what might have also upset the board was I saw that Graham Potter – he was quoted saying, if you look at the XG of the McGinn goal, it's not that big a chance. I think maybe that was one of those moments where they heard him say that and go like, what are you talking about? Why
what is this XG
why
that
are you talking about? This is like back of the house stuff that we maybe go over. This isn't something that you say to the press like, oh yeah, if you look at the XG of the goal, it shouldn't have gone in. Well, Graham, it went in and you guys still lost 2-0. So what are you doing? Where do you go from there?
Like, I know what he's trying to say, but yeah, I'm like, that's what it sucks though, right? When a manager comes out and gives an honest analysis of something, they get hammered for it. If he just came out and said, we'll have to go and look back and see what happened in that goal, we'd be like, well, he's not fucking saying it.
Yeah, that's fair. Aston Villa has had one of the best forms since especially since January. They've been one of the top clubs in the Premier League. So it's weird that it came after a loss to Aston Villa before a game against Liverpool and before the Champions League, just because Villa's been on great form. So I think if you give Potter the chance at home against Liverpool as being kind of the end-all, say-all game, then that should have been the one that was paid attention to more. But yeah, again, timing, I don't know. Did Todd Bowley see Brendan Rodgers available and is like, oh, all right, Graham, you're out. Long-term project done.
Let's get to that. That's a good point. Did he see Brendan Rodgers and say, hey, this is the guy I want? Did he see Nagelsmann? And he said, this is the guy I want? Because that's the only reason I thought, like, it's almost like you see that, you're like, oh, fuck, man, he's available. I didn't realize that. That would be interesting if he was available. I'd be all over him. And then, you watch your team on the weekend, they lose. They're like, you know what? Let's fucking do this. And I understand if, you're putting a lot of money in, you're seeing it as a longer term project. But 2 things come to mind. So if you said, okay, Potter is not the guy we want to go into in the long haul. We don't trust him. I mean, a lot of decisions have to be made at Chelsea in terms of who to move on, because they have to move on from some players. So the manager is going to make that choice. So they wanted to go with somebody who's they trust long term, probably, to make those decisions. But if you didn't trust them to make those long-term decisions, why the fuck did you hire them in the first place? Because you were in this situation to start with that you needed somebody long-term. I don't know if they realized that they didn't get what they thought they were with Potter, or like you're saying, like maybe Potter said something that they were like, that rubbed them the wrong way. Again, that goes back to, I think you're making a good point. Somebody, and I feel this Nagelsmann, not Rodgers, became available. And then the moment this happens, they're like, let's fucking do it. But to be able to, so if next week that guy is hired, you know exactly what happened. But if it doesn't happen, then why the hell did you? Because I don't know if that dude is going to wait till, I mean, Chelsea. So is Chelsea a good job in terms of stability?
Would Nagelsmann even want to take that job? I don't know who would want to take that job right now. I feel like there's so much volatility in what's happening there. There's so much uncertainty, and they're going to have to, because of FFP, they're going to have to sell off quite a few players this summer too, especially given, I think I read something about them terminating Potter also adds into that FFP. So there's going to be a bunch of more money that needs to be let go, essentially. And so that's a very difficult project to get yourself into, because when you look at someone, how do you go into a job where the person right before you was promised that it's going to be a long-term project and they have full faith of the board to keep going, and in 7 months they're gone? How do you go into that job thinking, okay, I feel good about this. They're going to back me no matter what. If I go through a couple bad spells, maybe it'll be okay, when it really wasn't okay. I mean, Nagelsmann, the guy had Bayern clicking on all cylinders, just absolutely firing away. Yeah, a couple missed results in the Bundesliga, and he got canned. Like, you think you expect a guy like this to go to Chelsea? Like, I don't know. It just, I mean, maybe it's because Potter got an extra few matches that Nagelsmann didn't get at Bayern that would make him want to go there. But I don't find it a very appealing job at the moment. Maybe in the summer, but I wouldn't want to take the last 10 matches of the season right now.
Yeah, see, now that you say that, if I am taking the job, though, I do want it now, because I think it gives you a chance to see what the hell you have. But then can you trust this ownership to bear with you 10 games over here while you try to figure shit out?
Yeah.
Because within this mess, I mean, you never know in Champions League. It's like two game, game. You can kind of like give up on the league, rest the 11 you want to get against Real, and maybe go further in the Champions League. I almost feel like, is that kind of a deal? But you need a manager. I feel like when you have chaos like this, you need a manager to come in who's going to have a big ego and more confidence. You're not going to bring in somebody.
Conte.
Yes, that's another name actually that's available now. Like,
He's
bring
back.
somebody who actually has their own presence. I think when you have chaos and you bring a manager that could potentially be the next big thing, I think you're kind of setting up the guy for failure as well, because you are loading. It's already a huge step from going from, Brighton to Chelsea and going into this chaos. Here's another bunch of money and a bunch of new guys. But then bear in mind, you have to sell 5 of these other guys. So good luck. And then, you throw them under the bus. That's why I don't know. You would have to have a guy like with a big ego, I think, taking this job. Is Nagelsmann that guy? I don't know. I don't know him that well because I don't follow the Bundesliga that closely.
Yeah, I guess, to kind of go completely back on what I just said.
Be your own devil's advocate.
Yes, this is just an exercise, you guys. I just do this for fun. I just say all the opposite shit for fun. If you are going to take the Chelsea job, it kind of is a no-lose situation, because you're kind of going into it in a way where there isn't much more damage you could do. I mean, they're not at a point where they'll be relegated if they happen to drop points the next 10 matches. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
So you kind of have this last bit of the season to see what the players are made of, and give yourself, the 10 matches to maybe decide if you even want to stay there and go from there. So maybe it gives you a little bit of just I don't know, maybe like a substitute teacher in a way. You go in, you want to feel out the school, see if it's somewhere you want to work, and then after that, you're like, okay, this is a complete shit show. All the kids are throwing their poop. The other teachers are not talking to each other. I don't want to be here. I'm gone. And that's
they brought a bunch of rich kids.
Yeah. Well, but then here's the thing, right? If you do take the job in that sense, you're going to be expected to do a little bit better because of all the money that was brought in. Because if you have someone come in and they don't do a decent job the last 10 games, people are going to go, how do you not do a decent job when you have $600 million worth of new players and, millions of dollars worth of existing players to be able to balance that together? So
that's why I think you have to bring in a name that will buy himself time.
Zidane.
Conte is a good name for that. Like a guy like Conte, Mourinho, whatever. Somebody who's going to come in and automatically comes with a certain amount of time. A guy like Potter, I don't think came in with that time. Like, I don't know, if you bring Zidane or something, for example, he comes built in with, in like 18 months. You don't get Zidane and fire him in like 3 months. You do possibly get Potter and fire him in like 6-7 months. So I think you need a manager that comes with the time built into the hardware somehow, so that he can come in and, nobody is going to question what he does 4 weeks in. I mean, sadly, we see how fans are, right? Whatever happens, it's, never Klopp's fault, for example, with us. And you kind of like need a manager who's going to come in, and in 4 weeks, you lose a game miserably. He's still putting the pieces together. This team is going to be something next year. You're already seeing glimpses, blah, blah, blah. As opposed to you bring a new guy in, that's maybe young, inexperienced, I don't know, trying to think of a name, but like another like rising star kind of a game like Potter was, you bring that in and you get the same miserable result. Nobody's going to find those small positives. They're going to be like, this is the same old shit. Then why do we get rid of Potter? Blah, blah, blah. So knowing how fans work, that's why I feel like they need to bring in, if they did this move, I almost feel like they better, or let's put it that way, they better have something big lined up to get it replaced right away. I mean, obviously not for today. And that's another thing. Like, why not? It's almost like maybe they saw us play on Saturday and they were like, well, he's definitely going to beat Liverpool. So we don't want to wait till Tuesday to can him after a win. So they're almost like, hey, before you beat Liverpool, let's can you right away. And did it
before the time makes even less sense.
And that's what I feel like, because it's not like they're going to appoint somebody today to like lead the team against like Liverpool. So it almost had to be done. Hey, before they get another good result or some shit, let's pull the plug while everybody is like pissed off. And they did it that way. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the rest of the week with both of them. Because like you say, there are some names out there. You can see some musical chairs. But yeah, after talking about the records, like they must have watched that show and be like, oh yeah, see this record now, 2 more canning. So you would think, I mean, we even said this was the last international break. There were probably more terminations after this.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, hold my beer, says the Premier League. Okay. Speaking of holding your beer, game again tomorrow. They're coming fast and furious, which in some ways, could they come faster? Can we play the rest of the days in 1 week, get it done and over with, and then we can just wait for summer? And that's another thing. Like, I realize it's kind of like miserable watching this team right now, but is there a point in like making a post every day on social media saying like, we're going to spend money now? We can't fucking spend the money right now, people. So
it happened last year too. Like from February 1st to like fucking May 25th, every day, spend the money. You can't spend any money right now. We don't need to see this every single day. All we see is just the bitching and the moaning and shitty t-shirts being made. And it's just ridiculous. All we're going to talk about is the Man United 7-0 and try to profit off that for as long as we can. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem. Like, you push that agenda constantly, which I understand, but I mean, you're just killing yourself. Like, you have all this money, but you went to the mall 2 a.m. I mean, okay, they're not fucking open yet, so you're not going to be able to spend that money. You have to wait in the parking lot till they open in summer. So it's just like, it just doesn't make any fucking sense to be like constantly saying the same thing. And I realize everybody's trying to find this one magic potion thing that we can do. But I mean, I think the biggest thing that we saw, and I think it's built into us now, like I said in the very beginning, even when we were at 1-0, I did not have confidence in that game. This is a team that we had confidence in when we were down 1-0 only a few years back. But you kind of see the fight and the resiliency of this team out there right now. They look defeated. They look like they're waiting for the season to be over at this point. And it's almost like that new car smell of the season is way gone. That run is way gone. They're waiting for like a reboot of some sort, it feels like.
Yeah, it's crazy. Exactly what you said that a couple years ago. And I think we've talked about this game in the past. The Aston Villa game where Robertson and Mane have those 2 headers in the last 8-9 minutes of the match. We felt like they were still going to win that game, even all the way down to the 85th minute, and it was still 1-0. And it's really sad to see how far we've gone from being so overly confident that, oh yeah, they'll be fine. There's nothing to worry about. They concede a goal, but also they didn't concede goals early either. Like, that was the thing. I think with this year, with how many goals they've conceded early, and going back to last year with conceding first, there's always that. And then the Madrid game where they went up 2, there's always now that thing in the back of your head saying, okay, well, they've capitulated before. Like, this is just it's gonna happen again. And I think that might be in the back of their heads too. Like, hey, even if we go up 2-0, we could still lose 5-2. So, they go up 1-0 against City, they lose 4-1. And so it's really unfortunate that this is kind of where we're at, where even when we go up, it doesn't feel good. It feels like it's a trap. It feels like, yeah, here, celebrate for a moment, because 10 minutes, you're not going to be happy. So fuck you guys.
I mean, here's the thing, and people always say like, "Oh, these guys are professionals" and stuff like that. Okay, you cannot go around for years saying mentality monsters, and then come back this year and be like, "Oh, that has nothing to do with the game. These guys are professionals and stuff." It is a huge part of the game. The whole mentality thing and the resiliency is a huge part of any team, and you can kind of see it in teams that win, and you can see the team that finds ways to lose. Basically, I mean, you see it in any professional. You see it in like NFL over here. You know, like NFL, like always, the underdog starts good. You're like, oh no, is this going to be an upset? And then the truth eventually comes in, and the team that is confident in itself eventually comes back and like smashes the other team afterwards. Whereas one team is waiting for something to go wrong, and it will go wrong because they are waiting for something to go wrong. And I think it's just and that takes time. You don't get rid of that in a week. The mentality monsters were not created within a few weeks. So a lot of games along, you need games along the way to kind of build that. You need the Villa game. You need like all these like late finishes and comebacks. So heck, I would even argue you need that Norwich game with Lallana breaking fucking Klopp's glasses. You need games like that along the way to build that mentality. And sadly, once it goes, and you can see kind of like that, it's gone. It's really hard to build back up. And you're definitely not going to do it midway of the season by moving Trent to midfield. That's just not going to change. Yeah. And that almost even enforces the fact that you are desperately looking for answers, and the answers are not in front of you. Like the answers not in that locker room anymore. Like you have to go out and try to find ways of doing it. And I think all this, we need that talk is not really helping the team either, because I would think the team feels the same way. I mean, they might already know, hey, we need,
Yeah, I mean, you don't think that they don't look online. You don't think that they hear all this shit that's going on. They themselves are probably going through a bunch of just looking inwards and thinking like, this is what is going on. Maybe like we don't need the summer for buying. Like you said, we just need the summer period. We need to have a stretch off of everything. Just give the guys a break from everything, and then just hopefully kind of get that to rejuvenate their spirits, because I'm sure there's tons of people, you look on any Instagram post, any Facebook post, even if it's just wishing one of the players a happy birthday, it's just comments after comments after comments telling them to play better, to leave the club, to do this, to do that. And we've gone over that before. It's just not something to harp on right now. But yeah, these guys are human beings still. And when you have, with yourself, like let's say you have a job where you put in 40 to 50 hours a week, every week, high intensity, like you're always so emotionally invested and you're working incredibly hard physically, emotionally, to do this specific job. After 4 or 5 years, you're going to be drained. And you're not running around, 6 miles a game either. You might be. I don't know what you do for work, but you have to
definitely not me.
You have to remember that there is an emotional and a mental component to this. And if that emotional mental component is gone, it takes time to bring that back, like you just said. The club that I see the mentality monsters in this year is Arsenal. Every time they come down, there's been a couple rough results, but like the Reece Nelson winner comes to mind. Like that was the Mane goal for them. That was the title defining moment for them, because they had that moment. And I think it's gonna take, like we've been talking about, a full summer off, and not money wise, but just off for the players to help them reset.
And we know, I mean, Klopp has said, which, Klopp's concept of, a lot of investments, I don't know, like that could be, because Klopp considers a $50 million investment too. So it doesn't mean we're going to spend 300 million. We could spend 80 million and get 4 guys, and Klopp would say, and then Klopp would count them in the offseason. It's like, look at the midfield options we have, and then list 8, 9 guys. So it doesn't mean value wise, but yeah, I think you're right. It's just like you need a reset button. It's not coming mid-season. Anytime we feel like it's there, it's coming, one good result, it just goes back. So having said that, we're playing a team that is also in shambles tomorrow. What are your predictions? I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of rotation, so it's the box of chocolates thing going again, even without rotation, plus the rotation on top of it, because probably that midfield is not going to be as we see it. And that's the sad thing. I mean, this is the midfield that I was like, hey, City game, we're going to be, Henderson's going to be rested, Fab is going to be rested. This is the game. I knew they were not going to play again on Tuesday, the same midfield. So it really worries me in terms of how we will be outmatched in the middle of the park.
Yeah, let me take a line from Peter Schmeichel and just say I don't have no idea what's going to
The
happen.
great words of Peter. I have no idea what's going to happen this season.
I think because of what just happened with Potter, I think this is where I am very nervous about tomorrow, because you kind of, even if they don't hire someone in, you get that sort of that new manager bounce in a way, or old manager leaving bounce in a way, and they could really be up for it. Whereas I don't know if this team is gonna be up for it at all. It's sad to say that I don't expect a good result. I don't know. It's just something. Both teams are playing really poorly. And one's without a manager, and the other one is saying this stuff, which it's fun, but so what can I say? The elephant in the room is probably why am I still sitting here in this crazy world, last man standing, and so it's going to be a weird game, and that's kind of all I have to say. Every match against Chelsea seems to be a little weird anyway, so it's unfortunate that it's at Stamford Bridge. I think I would have much rather preferred to be at Anfield, given the circumstances. But yeah, I don't know. Bajcetic being out really hurts. Diaz still not being available. I mean, we've kind of gone almost the whole season without him, but it hurts to not have those extra couple of guys that you wish you could just have the luxury of choosing from.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is like the middle of the field, the lack of options is unreal. And I'm winning that bet, by the way, because Ox already has more minutes than Keita is pretty much done. So that bet has gone down the drain. But I would not be shocked to see a Curtis Jones start, for example, tomorrow. And that says it all right there. Because, I mean, we know he did like really well in the national game, but you're going to see a couple of Curtis Jones trying to recreate that Everton goal from like the left corner of the box, kind
for
of
60 minutes
tomorrow. Yeah. So it will be interesting. I don't know, like the rest of the year, if you're still like invested in it so bad that you're depressing yourself, yeah, you need like kind of to kind of sit back. I don't know if the top four is still like a valid concept right now. Unless you go on a huge win streak, which has to start tomorrow. I think when we were talking about this game, the stretch, we said 5 points from these 3 games at the minimum.
Yeah.
Which means, well, you can't get 2 points. So now it means you have to beat Liverpool. I mean, you have to beat Chelsea and you have to beat Arsenal. And then, it doesn't get easier. You go to Leeds, which is a tough away game anytime you go to Leeds. And, I mean, rest of the schedule, you look at the schedule and you're like, man, these are all like easily winnable games on paper, which means we will really freaking struggle, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You already see like a couple of earlier games. Is there any other early games left? No, right?
Thank God.
Yeah, so at least we don't have that. We have that going for us. But but yeah, let's see what happens. Obviously tomorrow, the boys will be back tonight. I will not be able to join the pod. Layla has a game, so I will be attending Layla's game instead. Might be something good. I might try to hop in at the very end over there, but I'm sure they'll have a lot to talk about the City game. Even bigger news is during the podcast, they should be able to announce and provide all the links for the fundraiser, which is going live today. Thanks to the Polish Prince over here, putting all the work for the auction part of things, for the silent auction. So that is all set to go. The fundraiser is set to go that we're doing along with it. So we'll have all those links for you on tonight's podcast and then throughout the month over here. Please, please, please share that stuff. Contribute if you can. Doesn't matter if it's $1. Doesn't matter if it's $5. Doesn't matter if it's just one bit and it's one of the silent auction items. There's a lot of cool stuff that people contributed there. And then even if you can't, just freaking share it in your groups as many times as you can. Even if you see somebody else already share it again. So somebody who missed it on their feed gets to see it and hopefully contributes. Let's make one good positive thing out of this fucking season, at least that way, is kind of like what I'm after right now. Maybe convert everything into one big positive that we can. So when we look back at the season, we'll be like, remember that fundraiser we did? And just totally erase the season from memory. That's what I'm kind of going for over here. Well, Metovic, thanks a lot as always, bud. And then, Galley and Bickler tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, with you guys live as always. Take care, everyone.